Hello and welcome to Master Sitecore. My name is Martina, and in this video I'm going to show you how to install Sitecore.Habitat. I'm going to be going through this process without any pause or editing, so you'll be able to see any mistakes that I make and how I go about fixing them. So without further ado, let's go and have a look at Sitecore.Habitat. I'm on the Sitecore GitHub and the Habitat repository. And this is a working repository, so you'll be able to see new changes as they're committed. Now, what we're interested in, if we want to install this, is the wiki, which you can get to up here. And in the Getting Started section, you have these instructions for how to install Habitat. And these are the instructions that I'm going to follow today. So the first thing we see here is that it says, the project assumes that you have these locations. Now, just to make things fun, I'm going to use none of these conventions so you can see how to customize it for your particular setup. Next, we have the prerequisites. Let's have a look at that. These are the development tools that are being used. Now, the most important one for you to have is Visual Studio 2015. So don't use Visual Studio 2013 or you might run into some issues. You also need for this particular version Sitecore 8.1, but keep checking back to make sure that you're using the correct version of Sitecore. Now, thus far, it hasn't mattered to me which revision of Sitecore 8.1 I've used, but try and use the latest one because it's very likely that any changes being made will be on the latest version. Okay, so I have 2015, I have 8.1, and in fact, I've set up already an 8.1 solution. This is completely blank. There's no Habitat in it at the moment. And I've called it demohabitat.local. Okay, let's go back to the instructions. So I've done that. I have looked at the prerequisites. Now, step one for getting Habitat on your machine is to clone the Git repository, the GitHub repository. Now, for those of you that aren't familiar with GitHub or Git, you copy this URL here. You make sure you have Git installed, and I also have Tortoise Git installed, which gives me these options here to sync and things. And if you want to clone a new project, I'm just going to create a test folder. You right-click inside an empty folder, git clone, put in your repository, which is that one, click OK, and it will pull down that repository for you. Now, I've already done this in here, and you can see that it more or less matches what they've got on GitHub. Now, if I want to get the update, somebody commits and fixes a bug or something like that, I would just do a sync and grab latest. Okay, so that's step one. I have the repository on my local file system. I also have a clean Sitecore 8.1 website, although I don't have one called habitat.local, but that's so that we can have a look at Step 6 later on. And I'm not going to install web forms for marketers right now. It's not going to make that much of a difference. So let's move on to step 4, which is to restore NPM modules. Now, for those of you that haven't used NPM, I'll show you. It is a package manager. So it's a little bit like using NuGet. And it allows you to restore packages. So we are using Gulp for this particular version of Habitat, for example. It'll restore all that into your solution so you don't have to commit it into source control or anything like that. Let's go back. So let's do that then. Let's open Visual Studio 2015, remember? Not 13. I've made that mistake already. Let's run that. And then we're going to open the solution file here, this one. Okay, let's open that. There we go. Now, if you were to try and build this solution now, it would fail because we haven't done any of the steps that we need to. So it wouldn't find the Sitecore kernel or anything like that. Okay, cool. So this is the Habitat solution. You can see there's quite a lot of projects. I think there's 40, 50 projects almost. And they are organized into feature, foundation, and project. But we were told to run npm, weren't we? Let's just double check. Yes, okay. So we need to do that in command line. I'm going to run that as admin. Okay. I'm going to go to the root of my project, which is this. Okay, and then I'm going to do npm install. And then I'm going to wait for that to run. Okay, I did actually pause there just to give it some time to run. Okay, so what's happened here is I've said go and fetch all the npm packages, and they are specified, I'm going back to Visual Studio now, in package.json here in the configuration folder. And you can see it's saying the dependencies are on Gulp, on run sequence, vinyl, all these things. And if we have a look inside here, you can see that it's going off and fetching all of these dependencies. You can see SAS there, loads of other things. And they end up in the node modules folder over there. So it means you don't have to commit any of this stuff into source control. You don't have to manage which version you're using. It's kind of like NuGet, but for things like Gulp. Okay, so that's that step. I have now all of my npm packages installed. What's next? Open Visual Studio. Well, I've done that already. Here. Okay. So I have made things difficult for myself just to show you how you would go about changing your settings if you aren't using these locations or these names. Now, this is where I messed up the first time I did this. I forgot to change the URL. I forgot to change the website location. So if anything goes wrong, go back to step 6 and make sure that you've done all this stuff. So let's first of all go to Habitat Dev Settings. Over here. There's the source folder there. So my source folder is here. So let's make sure we overwrite this one. Okay. And there is nothing else in there that I need to change. And the next one is Gulp Config.js. Let's have a look at that. Okay, so the only thing that I need to change is website root and Sitecore libraries. So my website root is over here. This one. So I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to make sure I put in double backslashes as well. Okay. And my Sitecore libraries is going to be this with bin at the end. Okay. Now, this particular path is because there is a Gulp script that will run and fetch the DLLs from this folder and set them up as references. So there are no Sitecore references in this project or this solution yet. And if you were to try to build it, you would get hundreds of errors saying, I can't find the namespace Sitecore. So if you do build before we go and fetch our libraries, that's why. So that's what this does. Okay, so I've changed that. And the last one was, I think, publish settings. Possibly. Yes. So this is where they have the URL, and mine isn't that. I think mine is demo.habitat. Let me just make sure. Demo.habitat, yes, okay, good, great. So before you do anything else, if you haven't put your solution or your website in the location that they have suggested up here, you have to do step 6. Okay, step 7. Open the Task Runner Explorer. I already have it open, but I'll show you where to find it. View other Windows Task Runner. Okay. So view other windows. And there is a Task Runner somewhere in here. There we go. It's this one, actually. Oh, failed to load. Let's refresh that. Okay, cool. So if it fails to load, make sure you have gulpfile.js in there that hasn't been accidentally deleted or removed. And if it's saying, I can't find it, just press refresh, and that should do it. Okay. So we've opened it. We want to run copy Sitecore.lib task, which is this one. And do run them in order. I don't know what will happen if you don't. And you can see that this is a gulp script, and it's going to go and find my libraries. So my Sitecore DLLs from the location I specified, and it's going to copy them into the bin folders of all these projects. So just wait for them to do that. In fact, we can go and have a cheeky look whilst it does it. Habitat source feature accounts. So Habitat. Bin. There you go. So it's copied in all the DLLs that the project might be dependent on. You can see this is not in source control. This is something that was created by me running this script. Okay, that's all done. Now again, if you run this and nothing is appearing in these bin folders, you need to check your paths, make sure that you've typed them in properly. Let's go back to this. Rebuild the solution, restore NuGet packages. Okay, so I have my NuGet packages to auto restore. If you don't, you might need to do it manually. Let's see if I can remember how to do that. See, it's restoring it all for me. I'm going to press pause now and go and have a look at where you configure this because I've forgotten, and then I'll show you. Okay, so all my NuGet packages have now been restored. Now my Visual Studio is set up, and probably most of yours will be as well, that when I build, it will go and look for NuGet packages that need to be restored, and it'll restore them. Now, if this did not happen for you, you can right-click on your solution and click Restore NuGet Packages. Alternatively, just make sure that you have the following configuration. So go to Tools, NuGet Package Manager, and in the settings, you can tell it whether you want NuGet to be allowed to download missing packages or to automatically check for them when you do a build. Okay, so I've got my NuGet packages. What's the next step? In the installation instructions. Now it wants me to run this, publish all projects. And this is when all the code from your project location will be taken and put on top of your Sitecore website. And there's no risk of the DLLs being out of sync because you've already copied those from your website location. So it's guaranteed that they're going to work. Now I actually cheated and did this already, but number 2, publish all projects. I can run it again. This takes a little while, and again, it's a Gulp script. Gulp is a build tool, and it helps to automate some of these tasks that you would otherwise have to do manually. And I'll just pause here as well, and I'll show you later, but it's going to go through and build all the projects that it's been configured to build. Oh dear, failed. It might be because I've already built it. Whilst that builds, actually, let's go and have a look at Gulp. So we've already been, I think, inside Gulp Config. And inside the Gulp file, this is where you've got all the scripts that are being run right now. So you can see here, it's got the copy Sitecore libraries. where it's taking things from the website and it's copying into these bin folders, and it's doing that per project. The one that's running now is this one, and it's running all of these projects. It's calling these, which is now calling those, and you can see here that it's calling MS Build. So it's just using the normal Visual Studio Publish that we've got here, but it just means that you don't have to set that up yourself. It's already in a script for you. There's some other interesting stuff in here. We're going to be doing another, running another Gulp script, apply XML transforms later. That's also all in here. Yeah, it just saves you time from having to do all this stuff manually yourself. Okay, so that took about 8 minutes for my machine, but it's run through all the projects now and done everything it needs to do. So let's move on to the next step, which is to run another task. Okay, let's go back and do that. And we can have a look at what it does in the meantime. So apply XML transform again in the task runner, run that. Apply XML. So I'm looking again in the Gulp file. Okay, so this is like config transforms that it's doing here. That's what we're doing now, and that was quick. Only took a second or so. Next. Okay, now we need to use Unicorn. And for those of you that have never come across Unicorn, it is an open source project by Cam over here. And it's a way to make the deployment of Sitecore items across environments much simpler. There are other solutions to this challenge, but basically it'll take your serialized or your sort of file representations of your items. So we can have a look at this. And it'll turn them into Sitecore items for you. Let's use that. You can just see what's inside one of these. It has all the information you need to turn it into an item, and then Unicorn will put it back into the tree for you. So you got the template and the language and the content and everything in there. Okay, so let's then go to Unicorn by using unicorn.aspx. Again, order of execution is important. Now, I actually just went and ran this handy dandy URL over here, which will run all of this for you. So if I go to demo.habitat.local and then run that URL, then I won't have to worry about the order because they've already sorted that out for me in that URL. So what that's going to do is going to go through every single project, because every single project, every single feature has its own set of items, and it's going to restore those back into the database. And of course, I forgot to sign in. Unicorn isn't just going to run for anyone. You have to be signed in as an admin. So let's go and sort that out, and then we'll run this URL again. Okay, password is just B as usual. Now it might actually, it's got the return URL, so it'll go and run that. Unicorn will run as soon as I log in. There we go, you can see it running. Might pause here so you don't have to watch this progress bar. Okay, and that's that. I did get an error here. I did get that before and it didn't cause me any issues. But you can see that Unicorn's also been set up to auto-publish everything at the end. So you don't even have to log in and then publish. So that's all done. Let's go and have a look at Habitat. That was actually the last step. So the next step is to go and be productive. We'll just make sure that everything's worked. Now, overall, without me talking, that took... Ooh, yay, a problem. That's fun. Okay, let's log in and see what's happened. Maybe it was an issue that those files didn't get restored. Okay, so I had to pause a little there to make sure that I was the one in the wrong and not Habitat. So my issue was that I was missing some fields. So Unicorn was complaining that on the Habitat item, there was a copyright field specified in the config. So here. Also logo and host name and a bunch of other things. But it couldn't find that on the data template. So on site root. So I thought, okay, I'll comment them out, but that seemed like a bit of a hack. And it turned out when I checked the Unicorn control panel, if you go back to the control panel here, that there were a couple of projects, specifically identity, that weren't listed. So you should have a, for every single project, particularly in the features section of the site, you will have a Unicorn kind of configuration to go with it. So I just did a compare and checked, and feature identity, which you can see in here, that one, it didn't exist. So I just did a right click on the project there, and I did a publish on that just to make sure that it was actually published to the web root. Whoops. And when I did that, it worked fine. So if you run into any issues where Unicorn is complaining that it can't find a particular item or GUID, just make sure that all of your projects or all your configurations are listed here in the Unicorn control panel. And once I did that, go back to content editor. On Habitat, you can see now I've got my logo and I've got my copyright message, and the site also works. I'm going to run this again just to make sure that wasn't an issue. And there you go. Now Habitat is working. So all in all, without my kind of blunderings and without the talking, this takes about 15 minutes, and you spend most of that time just watching a progress bar. That's the end of the instructions. So happy sitecoring, and thank you for watching.